Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Timeout with Tackle What's Next, where we're chatting with athletes and execs on how sport has made a difference and changed the course of their lives and the lessons they've learned in life beyond the game. I'm your host, Danielle Berman. I am the founder and CEO of Tackle What's Next, and we help athletes create impact outside of sports and help them find their purpose in life after the game. So thanks so much for taking a time out with us here at Tackle What's Next. This week's guest is Sara Wegmann. Sara's a friend of mine, and she is the founder of Her Next Play. Her Next Play's mission is to develop the next generation of women through sports, and their programs inspire girls to stay in sports, help girls learn life skills and leadership skills through sports, and help their athletes launch their careers. Sara played collegiate soccer at Lawrence University, where she was a 2-year captain. And she was also an MVP. She was an academic all-conference team leader and a first team all-conference as well. And she's currently a competitive tennis athlete. We've worked with Her Next Play at Tackle What's Next a couple of different times on some really great events. And so I'm really excited to have Sara here today. I'm going to bring her up on screen and we'll get the conversation started. Hi, Sara. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing? It's so fun to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on the show, and it's great to highlight you and your background and the work that you're doing. So thanks again.
Thanks. This is my first Instagram live, so I'm just super excited it worked smoothly because sometimes it kind of going back and forth. So good.
You're on. And I love your background. Very cool.
Thank you. I got to pick the wallpaper since this is my office, the one
There
place
you go.
I can fully make the choice. So
I love it. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much again for being here. Just start us off with how's everything been going? You're running a nonprofit focused on young women athletes during 2020, which we know has not been kind to sports. So how have things been going? What have you guys been up to? Have you had to pivot? Just catch us up on the last 6, 7 months.
absolutely. So, I think like everyone, yes. I mean, pivot could be either unprecedented or pivot could be like the 2 words of the year. So we were just a newer nonprofit with Her Next Play, and we were growing so fast and had so many great things coming this spring and last summer. And so, yeah, we really had to shift gears, cancel events, move to more virtual programming. So we have two big parts of our work. We work with girls around leadership skills through sports and our Play Bold programs. And then we have our Career Accelerator Network that works with college athletes and former athletes on career development. And so for both of those programs, we did pivot. I think it's a little bit easier with our Career Accelerator Network to be able to do the type of work that we do virtually. But I will say one of the things that's been a silver lining is we've been able to expand nationally. So a lot of our live events were in the Midwest and in Minneapolis where we're based. And so through this experience, we've been able to include athletes from all around the country, from different colleges and regions. And then we're also been able to partner with great people like Tackle What's Next and you guys to do events that we never probably would have been able to do without that virtual component. So I know that we have changed and we're going to keep a lot of our reach and continue to do virtual things. But at the end of the day, because we're so sports based, we work with teams and we work with girls, and that live connection is so important. So, I mean, I will have to say, we just can't wait to get back to live events.
I'm right there with you. I'm loving the virtual where top half looks nice, bottom half is leggings. Like that's been really nice, but definitely missing the live aspect and the networking and just the connection. So glad to hear that's part of the getting back into the game here for you guys.
Right. And we were able to take advantage of being able to do something outside, and we had a golf scramble. Figure out how do you, use golf from a business sense to network and all of that. And I mean, it was just so fun to finally be able to be at an event where we could see people and connect and be social. So we got that taste, and now we're just waiting for things to be safe again.
Yeah, for sure. I want to also talk about your background a little bit and how you decided and kind of walked the path to get to where you founded Her Next Play. So let's start way back when you were first experiencing sport for yourself. How did what was your first sports experience, and how did you choose soccer to play competitively?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. It took me a while to connect the dots, but my first sports experience, I think, really shaped the reasons that I founded Her Next Play. But my first sports experience was when I was in kindergarten. I joined a t-ball team.
Oh.
Yes. I was one of only two girls. So dads were coaching, it was all boys, and they did not want us to be there. They did not let us play in the infield purely because we were girls. So I was always the tallest in my class all through elementary school, and I was the fastest too. And so I was just so frustrated and appalled that they weren't even going to give me a chance just because I was a girl. And so thinking back, I think that was really what sparked a lifelong purpose around fighting for equality for women in sports and leadership and anything. And so that luckily I did move on from the t-ball team and ended up growing up in Texas. I played almost every sport, loved it. In terms of how I ended up with soccer, I think volleyball and soccer were my two kind of favorite sports. You know, it was a lot easier to be a multi-sport athlete back when I was growing up. It's so much harder to do now, but I'm grateful that I did get the experience to play many different sports. And so I played high school volleyball and soccer, and I just ended up my senior year tearing my ACL playing soccer, but during volleyball season. And so didn't get recruited for volleyball, I think, because of that, and then rehabbed and was able to play my senior season and got recruited to play soccer. So I truly, actually, volleyball was my first love, but it was just one of those, like, in a kind of situational circumstances that led me to soccer. But, you know, that's the great thing about sports, is that I learned all the same leadership skills and kind of had a great experience, met amazing friends. It didn't matter what the sport was.
Yeah. So tell me more about the skills that you learned, because you mentioned too that like your foundational experiences in sport helped you launch Her Next Play. But what kind of skills did you learn, you know, outside of leadership? But like, what are you still using today as you work with younger athletes at Her Next Play now?
Yeah, a lot of different things. I think the biggest one for me was really just confidence. So that core belief that I should raise my hand, that I can put myself out there, and that it was okay if I, you know, failed at first. I had learned how to be resilient, to get back up. So certainly that, I mean, coachability, and I would say, like, kind of pair that with continuous learning. So, I mean, go sport to sport and advancing, you know, through playing at the college level. I mean, you always had to be really realistic about what are you good at? What can you add to the team? Where do you fit in? What are you going to bring? And how do you make that better, to really look for that performance edge? And I think that has really translated into starting Her Next Play and thinking about, okay, you know, what are our strengths? How can we serve people, our community better? Where, you know, where do we kind of differentiate ourselves as well? I'd certainly say teamwork. I think of kind of teamwork, partnerships, collaborations as one of my superpowers, and that was absolutely built during all of those sporting experiences. And it's really interesting because I didn't see this at the time, but after I graduated from college, after playing college soccer, I went into a super competitive, male-dominated industry, management consulting,
Mhm.
psychology major. So, I mean, to be really frank, I was completely underprepared because I didn't have a finance background, or never, you know, used Excel, anything like that. So, but we worked in project teams. So being able to really understand and have a lot of experience around being able to perform in intense environments as a team, I was able to lean on that skill to get me through. And I am quite certain I would have been fired if I didn't have that kind of that kind of experience to bring. And so I just, you know, culturally, it just felt so good to be in a team again, and I was able to,
Mhm.
in a way that was really helpful. So, and then I guess I would just go back to, I think I mentioned it before, but just that competitiveness, and I pair that with resilience. But it's hard right now, and certainly running a nonprofit that's newer and smaller in the pandemic, where, you know, we work so much with teams and sports have been so impacted. So whether that's, you know, figuring out how we deliver our program differently, being creative about funding streams, really thinking strategically about what we're doing, and trying to find those small wins. I mean, that those skills from sports have been absolutely critical in helping lead Her Next Play.
Yeah, those are all great points to bring up. And I love the aspect of resiliency, competitiveness, and teamwork were some of the three that stuck out to me. And I think those are really important for any environment you're working in, whether it's business, whether it's education, whether it's science, whatever it is. You need those skills for sure. And athletes certainly have a great training ground to learn those skills. So it's great to hear that those have helped you create her next play. And tell me a little bit more about getting her next play going. Why was it important to you to start this nonprofit, and how did you do it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are a group of us. So my background and career has really been in leadership and talent development, and then most recently early career development. So really passionate about developing young leaders and helping them as they launch their careers. Obviously also have that connection to sports and saw just all the skills that I learned through sports. So it was really just that combination. And through my work in early career development, I just ended up seeing so many amazing women athletes that were phenomenal. They just had all the skills that we just talked about to bring to the table, but often you just didn't have the time to do internships or didn't have time to develop that professional identity and really struggled on the job market once they graduated from college. And saw similar things with professional women athletes. Again, they had these elite level leadership skills, but not necessarily kind of the technical skills or the confidence. They really couldn't see how much what they brought to the table was valued. And so a number of us just got together and said, like, well, it doesn't seem to be anyone else that's really focused specifically on female athletes and women athletes. And we're like, well, like, we totally have the background to do this. And it just also, I mean, it was, I've always been super passionate about more women leaders and really driving for equality. And once we kind of dug in a little bit, I mean, the research is really compelling around how that sports background translates for women into leadership. And so some of the research has shown that women college athletes only make up 2% of all college students, but they make up 52% of C-suite women, so women that report to the CEO. I mean, that's amazing, right? So this is a group that if you want to develop the next generation of women leaders, to invest in. And so that was really the start to her next play. And I think what's been so fun and exciting is to see how much support there is in terms of the community and wanting to get involved and partner and help deliver programs. So we've had just I would say like an explosion of interest, and we're just trying to really translate all that enthusiasm into a model that works and helps us amplify impact. Because the reality is, I mean, athletes right now have lost their season, have so much influx. I mean, of sports is disrupted right now. Mental health issues are such a concern. And those that are, recently graduated or in their early career, I mean, that is the group that has been hit the hardest from a perspective with the pandemic. And so, if we think about helping launch careers, accelerate careers, I don't know in my lifetime that there's been a harder time to do that. And so that's where it's like, okay, well, our community needs us more than ever. This work is more important than ever. And so we're really focused on being there for our community.
That's great to hear. And that stat is really impressive, that 52% of C-suite, employees are former college athletes, female C-suite employees, I should say. And I think that's good to know. Like you said, we're all looking for female leadership and trying to expand that, I think, as a society. So it's great to look at that population and see how we can support them. So thank you for all that you do there. And I just have one or two more questions before we let you go. One was just in your background, in your experience. You mentioned being a little underprepared for your job out of school, but what's one thing that you did do or one thing you'd recommend to either your younger self or fellow athletes out there right now thinking about what's next? What should they be doing or what worked for you really well?
Right. So I definitely think that I got really lucky. So I wouldn't recommend my approach, which was a friend of mine recommended that I apply for this consulting job. And it was literally the only job I applied for, and I ended up getting it. So that's not what I would recommend others. But on the other hand, I mean, I really did think about my career early. And so I ended up working at the Career Center in college. And so then, I had, just frontline access to working on my resume. And I was pretty strategic about trying to get some internship experiences every summer. And that certainly is what helped me get my job in consulting. So my advice for athletes, because I know it's tough to balance everything, and especially now, there's just so much time pressure on athletes in terms of everything that they have to do to train. And so I think a lot of times athletes think so I need to focus on sports in school now, which is right. But if you can just carve a little bit of time out to start to think about your professional identity and just get a little bit of experience. So it's not that you need to devote an entire summer that you might not have time to an internship. I love micro internships. I love job shadows. I love, just a volunteer project for a company, because it doesn't have to be that full-time 12-week internship experience. You can really pull together a number of those smaller experiences, and that can be just as compelling on your resume or in an interview, and being able to talk about those skills. And so I think, if anything, I would just say try to just carve out that little bit of time and just get some experience, because it's so hard when you go on the job market and you really have no practical experience. These days, it's just internships have become so important.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. I love the micro aspect of it. It's not full-time, 24/7 working on this. And I know you have to jump, so I have one more question to ask you, and then let us know how we find her next play and how we support. You've obviously created a nonprofit through your experience supporting other athletes. If other athletes are thinking, how can I make an impact out there, whether it's supporting fellow athletes or other causes, what would you say they should start thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that getting involved in your community is an absolutely perfect way to build experience, to help create impact, and to learn about more about yourself and your skills. So I think it's a no-brainer. And I will just say, like, having transitioned from the business world into the nonprofit world, I mean, it's unbelievable how many organizations are already out there that you can get involved with, that you can, connect with to use as a platform. So I would say, I think it can be intimidated to like start a nonprofit, but there's lots of more simple ways, I think, to get involved. And I don't know, right now it just feels like athletes are in a unique position to use their voice and to have a platform and to drive change. And I think we all feel like, to get some control back, it's great to have an impact in some way. So there are so many organizations out there. I would just say do research, get engaged, look for opportunities. There's lots of different ways you can contribute.
Well, Sara, thank you so much for being here. It was great to have you. This was a blast. Let
Yeah.
us know how to find out more about her next play and where to find more information about the work you guys are doing.
Yeah, I mean, for athletes, I would say number one, join our Career Accelerator Network. It's free to join. You can go to our website. It's just hernextplay.org. Click on the Career Accelerator Network, and there's a link to join, and that will get you up to date in terms of everything that we provide for our community. So that's great. You can follow us on Instagram, also on LinkedIn. We share a lot of job opportunities and professional development opportunities for athletes. So those are probably the best ways to keep up with us on social media. And we also have a newsletter you can sign up through the website, but that's probably the best way to connect.
Awesome. Well, again, please be sure to go follow Sara and her next play and check out their site, the Career Accelerator program, if you haven't already. And thanks again, Sara, for being here and supporting Tackle What's Next. We love working with you guys at her next play. And again, thanks for your time, and for everyone tuning in. We'll see you again next week for another great conversation. Thanks again, Sara.
All right, have a great night.
You too.